Now, from Wish TV, your local news source, this is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. State lawmakers are floating a new property tax plan. The chair of the House Ways and Means Committee wants to scrap all property tax deductions. The plan would instead impose a single deduction of 2/3 of your home's assessed value. We should also note the proposal has not yet been actually put into the property tax bill. The measure also would impose a single statewide cap of $3 per $100 assessed. State lawmakers say they think this would save the average homeowner about $77 per year.
This is what's happening. We're using a levy-based system with a constitution that's what? Rate-based, haven't we? That's exactly the issue. It's a rate-based constitution, and we're using levies.
Who's the county authority who's going to say, whoops, the school's rate is we're within this $3 world. Everybody's okay. Everybody's at the caps. We're all doing perfect. But you got too much money in the schools and not enough in the fire departments. Who's going to say that?
No, I mean, that would have to be done legislatively. And it would say that for counties, I don't know, if it's 50 cents, don't hold me to those numbers, right, of course, but the summation of all those rate caps, they become rate caps, because the Constitution's a rate cap. The summation hits exactly 3.
Thompson says the bill is still very much a work in progress. He says his committee likely will discuss several more options before it votes on a final bill. Well, turning to Congress now, Congressman Jim Baird says the new tariff war is necessary to counter China. And he also says the DOGE cuts are long overdue. He talked to our government reporter, Garrett Bergquist.
Let's bring in Congressman Jim Baird. Congressman, welcome back to the program.
Thank you, sir.
So I want to begin with the spending battles in Congress. Given the kind of cuts the Trump administration is calling for, can you guarantee that we will not have another shutdown fight when the next budget year rolls around at the end of September?
I can't guarantee that, but I feel like that if the Senate moves on this bill today, that will avoid a shutdown for now and give us the appropriate time to analyze and do what should be done before September the 30th. And I'm expecting to try to do that long before that. But I can't make any guarantees. And I will say this as an example. The Ag Committee, we passed a farm bill way back last May, and it still hasn't been picked up by the Senate. And as a result of that, we're in the situation that we're in now. So.
You said the continuing resolution is not perfect. What are some areas that you want to work on building off of that between now and September?
Well, one of those is the farm bill. You know, we've got a lot of discussion and have just because of what I just mentioned. And I think it's very important to provide a safety net for our farmers. We're upside down in the economy as far as prices of crops and the profitability of agriculture. So that's just one example, and I think it's a very important one. And they need, and we need, to make sure that we provide that kind of assistance to our farmers and ranchers. And that's an example of what I think we need to do, and we need to do it right.
The USDA just ended a couple of pandemic-era programs that assisted food banks and schools with buying food products from local farmers and local producers. Are there any conversations in Congress about making those programs permanent, bringing them back possibly in the Farm Bill?
You know, everything's on the table. We do a farm bill every 5 years, and we're the farm community and agriculture, all the way through the agribusiness people, are a very giving people. So we want to make sure that those commodities and those food bank programs are really doing what needs to be done for the people that receive them. And we need to make sure that they are receiving them.
Will ending those programs in their current form hurt farmers as well as efforts to combat hunger?
Well, anything that has to do with the commodities that we produce in agriculture certainly has an impact on them. But I think farmers and ranchers are very resourceful. They are able to adapt to the current economy. I mean, we've been doing that for centuries. And so we understand the economy. We understand how good the products are that we make, and we know that people want them. And so we also want to make sure, since you're talking about the nutrition programs, we want to make sure that's providing the appropriate nutrition, especially for our school children, and that they have access to that kind of quality nutrition because that really is the future of our country. And we want to make sure we invest not only in their education, but we need to invest in their health.
The General Services Administration recently listed 2 major federal buildings here in Indianapolis on its disposal list. How concerned are you about your constituents losing access to in-person services for programs such as Social Security, the IRS, or the VA?
Well, it's really interesting to me that we have some of these discussions like this, because in private business, and I'm talking about farming as well as agribusiness as well as any other business, every year you kind of review what you've done, what's profitable, what's not working, what's not efficient, and you adjust accordingly. And if you've got a bunch of space that you don't need, or a bunch of buildings that's not being used and you're still paying rent and utilities on them, how does that impact your efficiency and delivery? So we're still involved in many of those programs, and we're going to see ways to make sure they're delivered.
Are DOJ's cuts legal? Shouldn't a lot of these cuts be left up to Congress?
I'm going to leave that up to the attorneys, but certainly Congress needs to have an input and an influence on these programs and what DOJ is doing. But we really asked DOJ to look for those waste, fraud, and abuse in our federal government, and that hasn't been done for quite some time. And I think it's appropriate now that we do that. And Elon Musk is making an effort to uncover. And if you really review the amount of dollars that have been spent wastefully and inappropriately, I think it's very revealing about how some of our tax dollars are being spent. So those need to go to the programs that are really being effective.
China has levied a 15% retaliatory tariff on a number of American agricultural products, including pork and soybeans. Is this new trade war going to hurt Indiana farmers?
Well, absolutely. You're concerned. Yeah, you're absolutely, and I understand that from a farmer. I've been in the ag background for all my life, and certainly those has an impact on trade. But on the other side of the coin, I think you need to recognize that China intends to be the leading world power. And they're doing all kinds of things, not only with tariffs, but they're doing things about letting fentanyl come across our border and really getting involved in the economy around the world and in competition with us as Americans. So I think these tariffs are simply a way to bring people to the negotiating table and see if we can't create a level playing field and to make sure that farmers have an opportunity for fair trade.
Some of your colleagues have stopped holding town halls after several confrontations with voters. Do you still plan to hold town halls in your district whenever Congress is out of session?
Yes.
What do you make of the decision by some of your colleagues to not do so?
Well, I think it's unfortunate that you have people that want to take over the town halls. And, if you really want to do that, you really don't need the legislator there, because if it turns into that kind of lack of discussion, are you making any progress, or are you just taking over TV time?
Before we go, I want to address a bill that you're co-sponsoring in Congress. It would enshrine the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance's working definition of anti-Semitism into federal law. What would doing that accomplish, and why do you believe it's necessary?
Well, I think it's appalling that our universities, which receive federal funding, have failed to protect our Jewish students and have instead chosen to stand on the side of Hamas. And if you look at what was done on October the 7th by Hamas, I don't see how you could stand on their side for anything. And so we need to bring them to realization, and we need our people to realize what this Hamas stands for.
Congressman Jim Baird, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, coming up, she's one of the longest-serving lawmakers in Hoosier history. We showcase the 40-year legacy of Vaneta Becker. Well, as we celebrate Women's History Month, we showcase the longest-serving female lawmaker in state history. State Senator Vaneta Becker has represented Southwest Indiana for more than 40 years. News 8's multicultural reporter Melea VanOstrand shares her story.
Women still have a long way to go, and serving in public as a public servant has been a very rewarding rewarding yet challenging career, but I've enjoyed it.
Senator Becker has served in the Indiana House from 1981 to 2005, served in the Senate since 2005, and has seen the state's political landscape evolve. But there are still disparities in the Senate today when it comes to the roles women play in the legislature, she says. She's proud that there are now more women than ever enrolled in law school.
Women still do not make in the private sector as much money as men. In the legislature, it's the same, but we don't have as many chairwomen as maybe we should.
Over the years, Becker has championed issues ranging from healthcare access to education. Some of her proudest achievements: passing the Children's Health Insurance Program bill, advocating for the completion of Interstate 69, and carrying the bill for the Dolly Parton Imagination Library, a free book gifting program for children 2 years ago. Though First Lady Maureen Braun is now securing funding for Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, Becker is disappointed that the House and the governor did not include the bill in their most recent budgets.
I'm hoping before the end of the session that we get that back in the budget. It was only like $2 million the 1 year and $4 million the second, and that's out of a $44 billion budget.
As she looks back on her decades of service, Becker hopes her legacy will inspire future generations.
I would like to be remembered as a collaborator and also as someone who stuck to their principles and their ethics in service to my constituents.
Senator Becker hopes the next generation of leaders get more involved and carry on what she and others set forth. I'm Melea VanOstrand, Wish TV, wishtv.com, or follow us on Facebook for updates.
All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team weighs the latest property tax proposal and how the new trade war could impact Indiana. All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Democrat Kip Tu and Republican Tom John. Good to see you both. Let's begin with the latest on property taxes. Tom, we'll start with you. We heard the latest idea at the top of the show. Does something like this stand any chance in the House?
Well, I think that he said, even in the comments, that this is something that is evolving. This is there. He's looking for new ideas as far as the chairman is. And what we do know is the governor wants to see property tax relief. We know that this has risen as the top issue in the legislature this year. And so I think whether that plan sees it or whether it'll be another one, you're going to see property tax relief, but it's going to continue to evolve.
Kip, your thoughts on that? Also, Representative Ed Delaney raised the question of who would enforce rate caps under the proposal. Why does that matter?
If you don't have enforcement of rate caps, you're going to have chaos. And I think that this proposal, I actually think, is a step forward because I think we have to protect the revenue of the cities. I don't think it's very much reform at the end of the day. $77 a year isn't a heck of a lot of money,
right.
But I also don't think it's the final plan. I think what it sort of signals, though, is that the governor's not going to get all of what he wants because we went from the Senate plan, which was not what the governor wants, to an even further away from the governor is where we are now.
Yeah, and it seems like he also has backed off on the veto, right, as well. So where, at the end of the day, where do we stand, do you think?
To be determined. I think there's going to be a lot of negotiating. I think at the end of the day, we're not going to have big reform.
I think we will have a bill. I think we'll have some changes that are going to happen, and some of them may be systemic, and some of them may take time to come in. But I think that what you really see here is a lot of different opinions and a lot of people looking at the issue, which is how you actually get legislation when it's said and done.
Politically speaking, Tom, did Braun kind of back himself into a corner on this issue?
Well, what he showed is it matters to him, and he was willing to step out and really step forward. I mean, obviously, coming out of the gates, this is a tough nut to crack, but he's shown how important it is to his administration.
In the end, I think whatever plan passes will be closer to what Jennifer McCormick was proposing during the campaign.
Right, okay. All right, well, we'll see what happens, gentlemen. In other news that we want to talk about here, a bill in the legislature would set up a grant program, I understand, if local law enforcement carry out limited immigration enforcement actions in jail. So, Kip, would this lead to more law enforcement agencies maybe taking part?
I assume it would. I would say that, you know, we have stretched our police forces in the state of Indiana, especially in the city of Indianapolis, to their limits. We don't have enough of them. the feds ought to be doing the feds' job. I don't really want my local tax dollars going to something that's the federal government's responsibility. But there may be instances where it's helpful, but I think the federal money ought to be paying for it.
Tom?
I think it's great for the state to support local law enforcement that wants to step in and be of assistance to this, whatever the case may be. And so this is just an opportunity for the state to say, we appreciate if you want to step forward as a local sheriff, as a local police department, and we want to support that. ICE is already paying part of the training that goes into it, but this helps offset the other costs that are going to go along with being a good community partner.
Speaking of cost, though, is it worth the cost? Because we're talking about folks who are already in jail, right?
Well, it is a philosophical question, right? That if you believe and want to see the agenda from President Trump advanced, then you may step up and say, I want to be a part of this. And Governor Braun, who's clearly with President Trump, is saying, and the legislature is saying, that may be something that we want to help you with as a local community.
Okay, well, speaking of federal policy, gentlemen, always a good one. Let's talk about tariffs, okay, shall we? Canada and China already imposing retaliatory tariffs on us, on our goods. At the end of the day, Tom, this good or bad for us here in the United States?
Well, I think when on the State of the Union, we heard the president say this is going to be painful for a while. And this administration has taken a philosophy that they believe there are issues that need to be fixed, whether we're talking about fentanyl or predatory trade practices or other things. And this is going to be pain. There is no question that a trade war is a problem, but this administration believes that they're advancing the long-term American agenda and strength of the United States with that.
Kip, how does this hit us here in Indiana?
Well, first of all, it's been completely chaotic. The president changes his mind
Back and forth.
On a whim from day to day as he gets, I guess, other information or other people get inside his head. He is a chaos agent. It's not good for the economy. We've seen what the stock market thinks of it. It's been a free fall for several days. And it's just not, he doesn't have people around him this time who are adults in the room to tell him, you can't be doing this kind of stuff because it's actually going to hurt the economy. And so far it has hurt the economy. And now they're admitting that it's causing pain. And he ran on how he was going to fix the price of eggs at day one, and he hasn't fixed it. Everybody's still feeling more pain. So I think it's going to hurt him.
Tom?
Well, it certainly in the short term may. I mean, the Michigan Consumer Confidence Survey came out and said it's at the lowest level since 22. But I also think there's some potential benefit that it may slow down the economy, avoid any risk of further inflation or reduce prices of goods, and also potentially reduce bond rates, which helps bring back into the conversation the deficit and the debt and how do we address those, which is obviously important in this administration.
You just got to get there first, right, Kip? And that's the hard part.
You do, and you don't want a president who's deciding that he wants to pick a fight with Canada just because his wife looked at the premier too far friendly. I mean, I think that's the reason it happened.
Quickly, gentlemen, I have about a minute and a half left. The USDA has ended the 2 pandemic-era programs. One helped food banks buy local farmer products, and the other's also helping schools. So, Kip, could this potentially come back in some other form, you think?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of good USAID has done all over the world. It's let us be the world leader in a lot of different ways, using soft power to have influence is important in diplomacy. It's important in also helping our, as you described, helping our farmers. It's been a almost universally well done program. Doge and Elon Musk is trashing it, but I think he's wrong.
What about USDA though, and ending their 2 pandemic-era programs though?
Well, I mean, the pandemic is largely over, so I don't think that. I think that it's worth reviewing government programs when something's over.
Tom?
Kip and I agree.
There you go.
Sometimes we got to cut back on spending. I think this is a good example where something was put in place. It was pandemic era. It's not a part of the legislation. It's not even a part of the policy and plans of the USDA. And I think it should go away. And if it's important enough and works enough to help our communities, bring it back, but bring it back as a program that's a part of the budget.
Okay. I like when you guys agree. That's always good. It's rare, but it's always good. Good to see you both. Thank you very much for being here. Yep, we'll be right back. right, thank you for joining us for All Indiana Politics this week. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30, and be sure to check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. Have a great rest of your weekend.